Hello, lovely podcast people. So I just recorded a podcast and I mentioned something and I think it probably deserved its own episode, even if it's just a really short one. At the end of that podcast, I said something similar and I would just like to request it again. You can now, if you're a Spotify user, you can now leave reviews. Previously, hundreds of you have reviewed the podcast on Apple Podcasts, which thank you so much for doing so. On Spotify, you can't actually write any words. So anyone who wants to write mean stuff, sorry, you won't be able to. You can just leave a 1 star. But yeah, if any of you are listening on Spotify right now, I'd really appreciate it. It's super straightforward. Just click on the podcast and you can leave ideally a 5-star rating. So this podcast is, I am going to try and commit to bedtime stories with the babies over summer. And I'm going to just be talking to them about Stoicism, essentially the philosophy of Stoicism, just because I thought I don't read books. And I bought myself the Daily Stoic, which is like this daily reading thing. And it's short. I just never got into it. I read it a couple of times and just stopped. As I say, I'm not a book reader. Those of you who heard any of my podcasts where I talk about Man's Search for Meaning, which I still haven't finished, even though it's like a 70-page book. But the babies encourage me to read, and I enjoy reading to them. It's nice and special. And I thought, you know what? We'll do something deep and meaningful, and I don't know, get them into a good headspace before bed so they can have good dreams, and it'll just be nice. Anyway, we did our first session last night, and it was nice. We were talking about essentially the fact that we can't control the world and what happens to us, but we do have the ability, and our greatest power is to control how we respond to what happens to us in life situations. And so I talk about if something bad happens to us or if someone's nasty to us. And Orly just came out with this thing that I'll play to you. I'm recording them just because it's really, nice moments I like to record. And I thought if there's ways I can go back and take notes because I know that people will be like, this is such a cool idea. How can I do it too? When I mentioned it to friends who've got children, they're like, such a cool idea. And I'm limited on time. I would love to go and then write, here's 12 lessons or whatever, or here's what we ended up discussing, and here's almost like my workbook of notes or whatever. But anyway, and I just thought, you know what? Orly came out with this. So, and I thought it's so powerful in terms of, it's said by a child, so it's nice. But this is what the internet and it is full of. And even for someone like me, it's a good reminder. But I know for any of you who are M&U certified nutritionists in training or graduates, this will be fantastic. And any of the mentees in the mentoring lab, a great reminder around imposter syndrome, around feeling vulnerable when posting online information, that's designed to help people, but the haters will always be there. The reason it's literally water off a duck's back to me that people leave 1-star reviews and leave nasty comments on YouTube, and is for this exact reason. And if anything ever does get to me, I try my very best to apply some of those lessons around, having this power to choose how we respond, but also understanding this concept, which I'm going to play to you, Orly saying these things. Right, ready? Hopefully this works.
Someone was mean, and that was because he didn't have any friends. And that's sometimes why, because you don't have friends to play with, and you might see people playing with each other, and that might make you feel even more sad and angry.
Clever girl, that's great that you picked up on that.
So hopefully you heard that, but essentially this is genuinely going to be a super short podcast, but just hopefully a nice reminder for some of you, no matter where you are in your life, if you've got troubles with ex-partners, if you've got, just trolls, negative comments on, an Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or TikTok account that you're trying to use to help people, there will always be negativity. Like I did this post recently about weight monitoring for those on a fat loss journey, but specifically females and around the menstrual cycle. And I got more than half a dozen hateful DMs or comments. Not all of them hateful, but some of them just saying, maybe you should just be quiet and just let a woman talk about these things, which is obviously incredibly rude, incredibly short-sighted, incredibly sexist, given that I'm talking about an area I have far more expertise than the average woman. I'm not talking about how you feel when you have a period. I'm just not an expert on that in terms of experiential personally or experiential with clients. I'm talking about something that's very academic, and I have far more experience, broader experience than an individual in their own experience of their body weight fluctuations. It's also, I'm talking about physiology as well. But anyway, and it didn't get to me, but in days gone past, it may well have got to me. And I just know that some of you, I will often get messages from people and it'll be like, oh, Martin, I must have made it. I've got my first troll. And sometimes I see through that kind of banter, and it's actually, I just need to tell someone. I just need, it doesn't feel nice. Like just someone randomly attacking you when you're just there trying to do good things. And it's just important to remember that very often, not always, but very often it's just people lashing out because of a chip on their shoulder, a bad life experience, currently being unhappy with their life. I know I'm preaching to many of the converted. Lots of you have listened to earlier podcasts and other things I've spoken about will know this, but it's just a nice, short reminder that, we see the world as we are. Don't know who said that, but it's not my quote. And there was another one that I said recently, which was about, if we don't heal our wounds or cuts when people have hurt us, we will bleed on those who want to help us, or we'll bleed on those who don't cut us. So essentially, it's just taking your bias out into the world, taking your hurt out into the world, and you just can't see the real intent or the good in people because you have this, I'm anti-men or I'm anti-women or I'm anti-whoever because I was hurt by someone of that race or gender or whatever, or all these different things. Or even just as I've said, science isn't going to out-explain someone's personal experience. So, if you've got low-carb zealots or whatever, it's important to remember that sometimes they will have been failed, or even this is the best analogy I'll give you, is probably medicine. If someone has been failed by Western medicine, and maybe more so a Western medicine practitioner as opposed to Western medicine. In the UK, if you go to your GP, they are very time pushed and they're not experts in every single thing. And they may not be able to help you. They're very short on time. They may be tired. They may be having a bad day. And it's free. That's another thing. It's completely free. So you've got limited time. They're not paid super well. And then you go away from that feeling disheartened and you go to a naturopathic doctor or a alternative medicine, functional nutritionist or whoever. And they will spend hours, because you probably spend hundreds, if not thousands of pounds or dollars, whatever, with this individual. And they put you on a boatload of supplements and, it turns out you're vitamin D deficient and you start feeling amazing again. Or they help you loads with, and I say help, they just throw the kitchen sink at you and they charge you the world for it. And they can give you all the time in the world because you're paying for all of their time, and they're very wealthy and they've got a range of supplements that you're buying off them and all this, that and the other. And therefore you believe in alternative medicine. You believe in these alternative therapies, non-evidence-based therapies, non-evidence-based practitioners. Those people who then are anti the establishment, anti-Western medicine, are sold on herbs and DNA tests and food intolerance tests. That, those biases, they'll come into your comment sections when you're trying to teach people for good reason that food intolerance testing doesn't work. And then you just get people going, well, you don't know what you're talking about. The studies you're doing, they're biased, and oh, who funded that? And, you're people get upset. So it's just understanding that sometimes it comes from a place of unhappiness. Sometimes people want to lash out unnecessarily. Sometimes it doesn't come from a sad whatever place. It just comes from a complete chip on their shoulder or a bias and their life experience. But anyway, it's just a good reminder. I think for lots of you who get kind of just see and get negativity online, it's a cool reminder from my 7-year-old. Anyway, look at that super short podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, much love.